In a small town nestled between rolling hills, there was a school that had seen its fair share of teachers come and go. Most did their jobs well, others stayed only for a short time, but none left a lasting impression on the students until Mr. Adams arrived. Mr. Adams was unlike any other teacher the students had known. He was in his late 30s, tall with salt and pepper hair, and always wore a kind smile. He had an aura of calmness that immediately made his students feel at ease. But more than his appearance, it was his approach to teaching that left everyone amazed. In his first week, Mr. Adams didn't focus on textbooks or lessons. Instead, he walked into class, stood silently for a moment, and then asked, "What do you want to learn this year?" The students, accustomed to being told what to do, were puzzled. A few raised their hands hesitantly. Sarah, a shy girl who usually sat at the back, whispered, "Aren't we supposed to follow the curriculum?" Mr. Adams smiled. "Yes, we will. But education is more than just the curriculum. I want to know what you're passionate about. What makes you curious? What excites you about the world?" That simple question changed the atmosphere in the classroom. Suddenly, the students felt a new sense of ownership over their learning. Some wanted to understand more about how the human brain worked, others were fascinated by outer space, and a few even expressed interest in poetry and art. Over the next few months, Mr. Adams built his lessons around these interests. He still followed the syllabus, but he found ways to tie in his students' passions, making math, science, and literature come alive. He often used real-world examples, linking everyday experiences to classroom concepts. Instead of lectures, there were discussions. Instead of tests, there were projects. And the students, for the first time, felt like their voices mattered. One day, Mr. Adams introduced something that would become a hallmark of his teaching style: the growth board. It was a large bulletin board at the front of the room where students could write down something they had learned that week. The catch was that it had to be something they learned outside of class. The idea was to remind the students that learning didn't stop when the school day ended. At first, students were reluctant. They didn't know what to write. But soon, the board was filled with all kinds of observations. I learned how to fix my bike. I discovered that trees communicate through their roots. I realized that my grandmother's stories have hidden lessons. Each week, Mr. Adams would read some of the entries aloud, celebrating the growth and curiosity of his students. But Mr. Adams' impact wasn't just academic. He had a keen sense for when someone was struggling. One day, he noticed that Liam, a usually energetic boy, had become unusually quiet. After class, Mr. Adams approached him. "Is everything okay, Liam?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Liam looked down, unsure of how to respond. After a pause, he muttered, "It's my dad. He lost his job, and things have been hard at home." Mr. Adams didn't offer empty words of comfort. Instead, he really listened. After their conversation, Mr. Adams discreetly arranged for Liam to receive extra support through the school's assistance programs. He also started giving Liam more responsibilities in class, like leading group discussions or helping organize activities, giving him a sense of purpose and confidence during a difficult time. Over time, the students began to see Mr. Adams not just as a teacher, but as a mentor and guide. He encouraged them to think critically, to question the world around them, and to believe in their own abilities. He believed in each of them more than they believed in themselves, and that belief was contagious. Liam, who once seemed withdrawn and overwhelmed, started to blossom. He took pride in his new roles, and his classmates began to see him in a new light. As a leader who was emerging from his struggles stronger than ever, Mr. Adams' quiet support helped Liam not only academically, but also emotionally, showing him that even in tough times, he had the strength and potential to rise above his challenges. As the school year drew to a close, the students were tasked with a final project: to create something that reflected their personal growth. There were no strict guidelines. Mr. Adams wanted them to be as creative as possible. On the last day of school, the classroom was transformed into a gallery of sorts. One student created a short film about the importance of family. Another wrote a series of poems about resilience, while a group worked together to design a model of a sustainable city. Every project was unique, a reflection of the students' journeys over the year. When it was time to present their work, Mr. Adams sat at the back, quietly observing with pride. Each presentation was a reminder of why he had become a teacher in the first place. Not to churn out test scores, but to inspire young minds to see the world differently. At the end of the presentations, Sarah, the same shy girl who had questioned the curriculum on the first day, stood up with something in her hand. It was a small, handmade book. She walked to the front of the room and said, "This is for you, Mr. Adams. It's from all of us." She handed him the book, and when he opened it, his eyes filled with emotion. Inside were handwritten notes from each student, thanking him for the impact he had made on their lives. One note read, "You taught me to believe in myself." Another said, "You made me feel like I mattered." Mr. Adams smiled, though his eyes were wet with tears. He looked up at the class and said, "You've all grown so much this year, but the truth is, you've taught me just as much as I've taught you. Never stop learning, never stop questioning, and always believe in the power of your own potential." The bell rang, signaling the end of the school year. As the students gathered their things and said their goodbyes, they knew they were leaving not just as better students, but as better people. And though the world would continue to change around them, they would always carry with them the lessons of the teacher who had changed everything. As Mr. Adams watched them go, he realized how much they had impacted him as well. This wasn't just another school year. It was a reminder of why he became a teacher. Every lesson, every conversation had helped shape not only their future, but his own purpose. He knew that, no matter where life took them, they had all left an indelible mark on one another.